Hi, Year 4. In your writing today, what you're going to begin to do is take apart the story of how the king of the birds was chosen and think about how it's structured, because that's going to help us be able to create our own plan for our own story. Now, what I'd like you to begin by doing is thinking about, if I had to break that story into 5 main sections, what name could I give to each of those sections? So how could you describe what's happening in each of the 5 sections? You only need to do that in a very brief sentence. You want to keep this as brief as possible. It's just like the bare bones of the story, 5 key things that happen through the story. Have a go at writing that yourself first, and then you can come back to this video and I'm going to show you an example that I have done and you can see how yours compares. Okay, so if you're coming back to me now, I'm going to show you the one that I have done. Here we go. So if you look at this column over on this side, I've got my 5 sections. So at the beginning, there is a leadership figure who has a problem. Well, if you remember, the birds are arguing, so Halak Eunuch decides to appoint a king. So Halak Eunuch was having a problem and he decided he needed to appoint a king. The second part I have written down is that many other characters think that they can help solve it. So if you remember in the story, lots of birds wanted to rule and they made their case as to why it should be them that's going to be the new king. My third section, the main character wants to be the one to solve the problem and get the reward, but that main character has a problem. So in this story, the main character was Cuckow the Quetzal, who wanted to be king, but felt his feathers were a bit too shabby to allow him to be. So the fourth section is that main character persuades someone to help. And Cuckow the Quetzal decided to persuade his friend, the Roadrunner, to lend him his amazing feathers. The main character, by the end, has solved the problem and is rewarded, but goes back on his deal. So Cuckow did become the king, but he forgot about his poor old friend, the Roadrunner, and he never gave the feathers back to the Roadrunner. And as you could see from the pictures that we had earlier in the week, the Roadrunner hasn't got those beautiful, colourful feathers anymore. Now, what we're going to do is you can use my box up method here that I've done if you would like to use that one, or you can stick with your own. That's entirely up to you to choose. This is on Padlet for you to download if you want to. Now, in the second column, what we're going to do is start thinking about how we can use those 5 parts to structure our own story. So you are going to choose a location for your new story. You might want to keep it very, very similar, and that's absolutely fine. You might want to stay in the rainforest. You're going to think of a new leader. Maybe you still want the leader to be Halak Eunuch. That's absolutely fine. Maybe you want the leader to be a jaguar, one of the wild cats that lives in the rainforest. Or you might be deciding, do you know what, I'm going to pick up my story and I'm going to go and put it in Antarctica. And my leader is going to be a completely different animal, and that's absolutely fine. But choose your location and your leader and what they have decided to do. Then you've got some new characters that you can bring into the story and perhaps why they should be chosen to do whatever this problem was that you came up with in the first section. So if you remember, that was the cardinal and the wild turkey. They were the other characters, weren't they? And I'm sure there's one other that I've just forgotten at the moment. The main character. So who's going to be your main character in your story? It was a Quetzal, but who would you like it to have? What's the problem? Why can they not do what the leader wanted them to do at the moment? That main character is going to have a friend, and they're going to persuade that friend to help them. What they're going to persuade them to do, and how? What's the deal they're making? What are they going to offer in return? And then in the final part, the main character will get what he or she wanted. But how do they go back on the promise, and how does that affect the other character? So you have two choices today. You can either stick very, very closely to the Mayan legend and base it in the rainforest and use those kinds of animals, or perhaps you could put it in a British woodland and use birds and wildlife that you know of in our woodlands around where you live. Or maybe you want to go somewhere completely different in the world, and that's absolutely fine. But today is just concentrating on a structure for your story, having that leader that's got a problem, characters coming in, a main character who can't do whatever the leader wants them to do at the moment. How are they going to overcome that? Okay, so it's just a plan today, and you can use my leaflet if you want to, my template, if you want to fill that one in, or you can go with the one that you did at the beginning. That's entirely up to you. Look forward to seeing how your stories are going to pan out. I'll see you soon.